Welcome to 50 Shades of Wealth, Confessions of a Real Estate Investor, the show where you'll learn the real estate investing secrets of the pros. Your host, Sarah Jung, pulls back the curtain and shows you how to build wealth with real estate investing.
Welcome to 50 Shades of Wealth, Confessions of a Real Estate Investor, the show where we talk about the good, bad, and ugly when it comes to real estate investing and strategies for building long-term wealth through education and personal growth. I'm your host, Sarah Jung, CEO and founder of Legacy Bloom Investments, a multifamily investment company. Today, I'm super excited to have with us a very special guest, Chris Salerno. After relocating to Charlotte, Chris developed an extreme passion for real estate. By the time he was 24, Chris successfully transacted more than $40 million in real estate volume and helped lead the number one real estate team in the Carolinas to produce more than $140 million in annual sales. Named in Charlotte's 30 Under 30 and nominated for Forbes 30 Under 30, Chris quickly gained recognition and notoriety for his hard work and dedication. Chris believes investing in real estate is the best building block for financial freedom. He is a firm believer in affirmations exemplified by notes personally placed around every corner, which serve as a constant reminder that every day is special and that his life is purposeful. He's also the founder and host of the Mindful Multifamily podcast. Through Chris's vision, QC Capital has quickly become a well-respected, high-return investment firm. Welcome, Chris. How are you today?
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be on here.
Absolutely. So Charlotte's 30 Under 30. Wow.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get to that point? I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I got an email a couple days ago for Forbes of 2021 nomination. So someone nominated me. So I'm thankful for everyone who follows me and follows my journey. So yeah, when it comes to the Charlotte's 30 Under 30, the gentleman and the team that was behind that picked me up through the social media and through the real estate industry. I was the only real estate agent, broker that was nominated ever for the 30 Under 30 for Charlotte. The reason why I got into brokeraging real estate is because I knew, one, it's 100% commission. Mm-hmm. I knew I cannot rely on a steady income. And I knew I would have to outwork my competition to get a paycheck. And I knew my work ethic followed how much I was going to get paid. And I knew I will outwork anybody. I will lose sleep. I don't even need sleep if I know, in a competition that I need to prevail and to gain success. So through that journey, they found me and they interviewed me, and I submitted a full proposal after the interview, and they loved the story and where I came from and how I got to becoming a broker very quickly, and the position I was in leading that number one team to produce that amount. And that's how I got it. And then I pivoted into the multifamily industry.
Wow. So when you say that you didn't get any sleep, you look pretty good to me. So it looks like you're pretty well rested.
I woke up 3 times last night for my newborn. So if I look well rested,
congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But yeah, I normally like to get 5-6 hours of sleep a night. But I think, a big thing is that, some people say they don't sleep at all. And I've done those times before where I didn't sleep and I just work. But I really quickly realized no matter how much sleep you get or not, it's irrelevant. What's relevant is, what are you doing during the day? Are you being productive or are you being busy? Being productive and being busy are totally different. And you need to make sure you're being productive in your work to really gain the massive success or to reach your goals that you want to reach.
Sure.
So I realized that very quickly and realized you do need sleep to function well, but you need to make sure that you're being productive instead of being busy.
That's a very good point. And many days I find that there's a lot of busy days, but at the end of the day, sometimes I don't get much done. So I can definitely relate to that point you just made.
Yeah, very much so.
So with the real estate, tell us how that developed into multifamily. Then did you start with multifamily investing right away, or kind of how did that evolve for you going into multifamily? No. And then kind of where are you at now with multifamily?
So yeah, great question. So before I get started, I was always a type of person to take risks. I had no fear. And what I mean by that is when I was a little boy, I was 11 years old, I was learning how to snowboard. And we did the lesson on the bunny hill. And I remember asking the instructor after the lesson, I looked up and I said, well, I want to go on the big hill. He says, no, no, no. He says, you're just starting out. This is your first time. You need a couple months on the bunny hill, and then you can master the big hill. And once he walked away, what did I do? I hopped on that ski lift and I went all the way up to the top.
I was going to say you went to the big one.
Yes, I just went. I said, I'm not listening to him. I went and I learned very quickly how to snowboard. And through trial and error, I fell down, knocked my face, got hurt and all that. But I kept getting up and I kept going up to that big hill. And I think I've done that all the time. And relating that to me going into the multifamily industry, towards the end of my career and brokeraging real estate, I went back to an old game we played, and it's called Monopoly. And I realized you don't broker real estate in Monopoly. You buy the land, you build wealth. And I said, that's what I need to do. So when I was studying 08 to 2012, what asset class recovered the quickest and also stayed very steady, it was multifamily. So I told myself I will become an expert in the multifamily space. So I started studying it. I listened to podcasts like yours, podcasts, books, you name it. I started studying it. And I said, well, I learned by trial and error. I need to get my feet wet. So I started going on LoopNet. I didn't know any other websites. I just knew, because I was a broker, I knew Zillow was residential and I knew LoopNet was commercial. So I got on LoopNet and I was looking at any asset that was multifamily, over 5 units in my area. And I would go out, I would tour them, I would talk to the brokers, and I started submitting. I figured out, okay, what is an LOI? All right, well, this is how the commercial world does it. We don't do that in the residential world. So I need to start submitting LOIs. So I start submitting LOIs and getting feedback and getting a base of really good understanding. One, I never had an LOI accepted. Thank goodness I didn't at that time, because I would not know what to do, but I got my feet wet. I got the understanding of it. And that's how I got into the multifamily industry. And very quickly, I went to a meetup, a local meetup. And one thing I recommend for everybody, if you go to a meetup or a conference, go by yourself. Now, you can take your spouse with you on the trip, which I do, but the actual conference or the actual meetup, I do not take my spouse with me. She stays back. And the reason why is because if she would come with me, I would talk to her most of the time. And I would locate her. Where is she?
Sure.
Let me go to her.
That makes sense.
But when I'm by myself, I'm forced to talk to other people, because I'm not going to stand there awkward in the middle of the room. I will not. So I'm going to sneak my way into conversations and meet people. So I went to a meetup and I was in a 3-piece suit. I walk in and I think I'm going into Blackstone's board meeting, and everyone's in shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops. And I'm like, excuse me, sir. I said, I'm here for a multifamily investing meetup to talk about multifamily. He says, well, you're here at the right place. Come on in. I'm like, no. Like, we're going to talk about buying multifamily real estate. And he's like, yeah, you're here. And I'm like, okay. But I came by myself. So I said, I got a network. So I started networking, heard a lot of people's success, and heard one gentleman's success. And I went up to him and shook his hand at the very end. And I said, based off your success, you have to have a coach and a mentor. I coach and mentor people. You have to. Who is it? And he said, Joe Fairless. And I said, I want him. I said, I don't care what it takes. I want in. And I was able to get into his private group that he has. I know he doesn't accept anyone into that group now, which I'm thankful that I'm in it. But I was able to get in it. He helped limit mistakes. And I always recommend get a coach, get a mentor early on to help limit mistakes. Right now, we switched into creating a fund, and we have a new advisor / mentor to our company, which is directly managed over $2 billion in capital and over $80 billion in assets under management.
Wow. Good for you.
So we're leveling up, but we still have Joe. We love Joe, and he's a huge help. But that's how I got into the multifamily space, and that's how I projected the company very quickly, is getting mentors, limiting my mistakes, and actually taking action and not sitting on the sideline.
Well, and you seem like a man who definitely would take action. So congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. I never told the story. This is the only time I told the story about me snowboarding. So your listeners get a little deep.
I kind of would figure that about you, that you go for it. And for our listeners, LOI, just so everybody knows, is letter of intent. Yeah. So you're out there sending all of these letter of intent LOIs out to all these brokers. And did you get any response from them, or kind of how was the overall response?
No, yeah, I got responses of, what the heck is this? No, you can't do that. This doesn't make sense. So then I started networking with other investors, and I'm like, look, what's your LOI look like? Walk me through it. And I was brokeraging residential real estate in the middle of it. I was doing residential real estate, but I was educating myself on it. And then the big thing is you can go to the SEC website, sec.gov, and you can search up people's PPM. And if they are a 506C, you can research their PPM and study them. So I studied Grant Cardone's. Everybody knows him.
Grant's pretty big.
Yeah, so I studied his PPMs, and it put me to sleep. They're lengthy, trust me. But I studied them because I want to know how he's structuring deals, what they're doing, what's the verbiage, and that helped me as well. So that's definitely projected. But yeah, it was a learning journey that I went down, and I'm happy that I connected with a mentor and a coach to limit those and to really project everything.
Chris, explain to us a little bit what attracted you to multifamily from an investment standpoint versus investing in some of the other asset classes like single family or commercial storage or anything like that?
So I have one single family rental. One. And the reason why is because she begged me to be her landlord. It's been 2.5 years. She's paid every time except the last month. Actually, last month she paid. The month before that, she paid a little more than half of what was owed. But the reason why is because, for example, she paid a little more than half what is owed. Well, she still owes the remaining difference and a late fee, but now that's one tenant. If I have to evict her, I have to pay for it. She leaves. Now I got a month to 2 months. I have no income for that particular asset. So I realized that very quickly is that the risk is actually larger investing in a single family where they may not pay. You're going to have to pay for everything. If an HVAC goes out, that's $5,000 to $7,000, depending on what new HVAC and everything that you need. $5,000 to $7,000. That ruins your returns first year, probably going into the second year.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Depending on what state you're in, if you invest in the state of South Carolina, you're taxed at 6%. It's almost doubled compared to if you were a primary resident there. So that plays a big curveball into your numbers. So I realized that quickly. And I said, it just makes sense buying a 100-unit apartment complex. And if 5 people don't pay, you can still profit on it. And you're still able to, remove them and put new tenants in there. But you're still able to profit. But the biggest thing on top of that is if out of that 100 units, if you just raise the rents by $25, your evaluation for that property has skyrocketed compared to if you raise the rent for a single family $25. All you did was go up $25 and you went up a couple $100 a year compared to 100 units where now your evaluation is $20,000 more. So it plays a big difference and a big role. So that's one thing that I realized very quickly and why I wanted multifamily. Plus, during 2008 and 2010, 2012, it was the strongest asset class. And we're seeing that right now. I just saw statistics by a Multifamily Housing Association. In August, 90% of people paid.
Wow.
That's huge.
That's great news.
That's huge. It's phenomenal.
That is. So essentially you're using economies of scale, right? What kind of parameters do you have when you look for multifamily deals? Or do you look for, X amount of units? What kind of returns typically do you look for?
Yeah, so we look for over 100 plus units, primarily B value add. We will look into A and A core plus assets. We definitely like a good mixture of cash on cash and IRR, but we're not steered directly towards either. And when it comes to cap rates, a lot of people are going crazy over cap rates. And my thing is that, we're looking at an asset that's at a 4.3 cap, but it cash flows and the returns are high teens. Which right now, high teens are hard to find.
That is hard to find. So it sounds like you found a nice gem there.
Yes, it's an off-market deal through broker relations.
Very nice.
So it takes time to get those, but I'm glad we got that. But when it comes to it, that's really what we look for. I've talked to people that were like, well, I want a 7 cap. And I laugh. You're not finding a 7 cap. A B 100 plus units, you will not find a 7 cap.
Well, especially in your market.
Those days are over.
Yeah. I would say those days are over. Especially in North Carolina, I can't even imagine that those would exist.
No, when we underwrote a asset, or I'd say a B plus asset in Dallas, and it was at a 3.2 cap. So as
Wow.
long as it cash flows and the returns look good, we'll definitely look to take down the asset and acquire it. But going off that, we also look for demographics in the location, and that's very important. We look for a Chick-fil-A, we look for a Starbucks. The reason why is one, Chick-fil-A does a lot of market research. Two, Starbucks, not that many people are going to go buy a $6, $7, $8 cup of coffee. Starbucks is a private company. It's not a franchise. They're going to do their research on location and the demographic of the people who are able to pay that much for a cup of coffee. So it's good to look at assets that are around those locations. Fresh Market, Whole Foods, those are also great stores to look at too, because they do a lot of research on the market in the area.
So that's a great strategy, because I think as investors, we're always wondering if we're buying in the right market and what it's going to look like in the next few years. And so piggybacking off of another company, essentially, who has already done all the heavy lifting and hard work, you're kind of just going that route. And if they've already done the work and the research, then you figure, it's probably a safe call, right?
Yeah, I think, they have thousands of analysts. Starbucks, their real estate company and the real estate side of their team, I'm sure has thousands of analysts. I'm sure they really go in deep with it. They talk to the city, which we also do. We talk to the city and to find out what new products coming on, but they really go deep with the household income. They have it down pat with it when it comes to statistics. If it doesn't meet their certain requirements, they know that they can't put a Starbucks in that location, or Starbucks may struggle. So they study all of that when it comes to income, household income, per person, living residence. I mean, they study all that, and it's good to piggyback on their information because I've never seen a Starbucks go out of business. I've seen grocery store chains go out of business, but every Starbucks I've been to is normally in a great location and is normally in a great retail location like a Target or Harris Teeter. If you're in the Carolinas, Harris Teeter is a little higher end type of grocery store. You see Starbucks in both of those locations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are phenomenal locations and they do a tremendous amount of research.
You're listening to 50 Shades of Wealth, Confessions of a Real Estate Investor. Want a free guide to behind-the-scenes secrets of real estate investing? Head on over to legacybloom.com and claim your free book today.
And as far as when you look at a market, are you looking in the primary markets, or do you look at secondary markets, or do you have a preference, or is it just kind of specific to that market?
Yeah, I think each asset we look at is definitely specific to the market because the golden rule for real estate is location, location,
Mm-hmm.
location. So we'll look in primary, we'll look in secondary. We don't like to really venture farther out from there unless we know the location very well. One thing I love is that each individual person that works for QC Capital, we live in the markets that we invest in. We know it very well. Now, I can't say that's going to be the case all the time as we expand, as the company grows, but we do tremendous amount of research and we have a system in place before the property even gets to my desk. We have multiple systems in place and criteria that asset has to hit before it gets to my desk and I make a decision on it. So I know that once it lands on my desk or comes into my emails, I know that property has been thoroughly embedded, thoroughly researched. The criteria that we have has been hit before it came to me to make a decision if we want to move forward on it or not.
And how many deals does your team look at on average? Do you have an idea, kind of on a weekly basis? How many deals do they have to look at before you actually get one that's promising?
Yeah, I think my acquisition team's been working extremely hard. I think he just added like 7 deals yesterday and today to our deal list. So they've been working extremely hard. A lot of that's on market. We do have a handful that are off market through the relationships that we built. But I would say annually for this year, COVID did take a little slow deal flow coming in. And I think everybody saw that because no one knew what was going on. So a lot of sellers paused. But when we really analyzed it, I would say over the year, we've probably looked at over 100 deals that came into our pipeline. And we had, I would say, around 8 to 10 of those that made sense. So about 10%, which is a good number that actually made sense. But once we got into the best and final, there were groups that were just underwriting so risky, and we weren't willing to do that. We were not willing to fudge the exit cap to make sure the IRR looks good. We're not willing to do that. So it's very important to stay conservative, but also know when you can be aggressive and what you can be aggressive on to make sure that the asset is a good asset that can produce returns.
Yeah. And Chris, from what I know about your team, you guys really operate with a lot of integrity. And I think that's very admirable of you, and taking care of your investors and such a critical part of it in this business.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. And I definitely appreciate the kind words. One thing that we're doing new too is a lot of people will put fees in the CapEx. A lot of people will not detail the fees. And we're actually on our next asset, we're in detail on the fees. So we have a renovation fee that is charged, and that's charged to the GC or the property manager or our team to make sure we're on site, to make sure that we're getting renovations done. And a lot of people throw that renovation fee into the CapEx, and they don't even tell you about it. That renovation fee can be anywhere from 5 to 15% of the CapEx. That
can be pretty substantial.
Yeah, and they won't tell you about it too. I don't think that's right, and we don't think that's right as a company. So what we do is we in detail show you, look, this is the renovation fee and this is the amount over the 5-year, 7-year hold time.
Sure.
This is what the amount will be to go on a day-to-day basis. Because as you know, dealing with contractors is not a fun job.
It's not.
And it's not easy. So making sure that the job's getting done properly and on time is very important. But we're not willing to throw that in the CapEx overall amount and not be in detail with it. So I think that shows tremendously that we're willing to be upfront and tell everybody, look, this is what it is and this is what it costs to operate these deals.
Well, and I think that transparency is so crucial for your investors. Just putting yourself in their shoes. Wouldn't you want to know that kind of information? I would. And it's not that there's nothing to hide about it. If it's justified and you have an explanation of what it's for, I don't think investors are going to balk at it. If it makes sense. So that transparency and just disclosing as much as possible, because essentially, you're all in it together, right?
Correct.
You're the GC, but bringing in your investors, they're just as much as a part of it. They may not be the hands-on part of it, but they are in the experiential part of it just as much as you are.
I don't mean to interrupt. I get so excited talking about real estate, but it's super important, and communication is key to us. If you are married and you're not communicating well, what's going to happen to your marriage? It's going to go down. It's going to fall. And that's how I see this type of partnership with LP investors. Even though we're the GP on the deal and operating it, I see it as a marriage. We're going to be married for the next 5 years, and communication is key. Trust is key during that time. And if something goes wrong, I am writing an email to everybody and say, look, we did this wrong, but this is how we're going to fix it.
Sure.
And I think that upfront and that communication really goes a long way. And I've been in and analyzed deals that, that they don't communicate that well, and you don't even hear from the sponsor for a year, which is crazy. It's just mind-boggling that someone would operate their business like that. But we invest alongside of all of our investors, so all of our interests align. One thing that we do is that when you ask us our portfolio, I always say we have ownership of. I don't say we own it. We don't own it outright. If it wasn't for our trusted LP partners to partner alongside of us into the physical asset itself, then we wouldn't have what we have today.
Yeah, so you can't make a deal without them, essentially.
No, yes. Yeah. And I always say we have ownership because it's all of us together making it work.
Yeah. And, Chris, your company and your team is very admirable. We really admire all the work that you've done. And I know some of the work that you've done, and congratulations on your success.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I want to pivot a little bit and get a little personal with you, if you don't mind.
Let's do it.
So what are you most passionate about in your life? You do the investing, multifamily, you have a new family. What motivates and drives you?
Well, once my son came into the world, his name's Cruz Alexander Salerno, it is a whole different love that I've never felt before. And the passion to really work on a day-to-day, I work 12 to 15 hours a day, is family. And I didn't come from a wealthy family. In Fort Lauderdale, I grew up in a duplex. Well, I didn't come from a wealthy family at all. My mother worked her butt off. She's worked 3 jobs sometimes to make sure we had food on the table. So when it comes to that, I have a passion for my family, and I also have a passion for helping other people. I want other people to experience the financial freedom. I want to leave a legacy. And the reason, in the way I see of leaving a legacy, is not me donating all my wealth once I die to a charity. It's actually creating your family tree to become financially free. No matter how it is, my name doesn't have to be tied to it. The company doesn't have to be tied to it. But as long as your great-great-grandkid said, my mother or my father invested into real estate way back when, and now we can do whatever we want. We're not worried about anything, or we don't have to turn off the AC to make sure we save money on the electric bill. I've been in a house where the AC was off because they wanted to save a couple $100s on the electric bill.
Ooh.
And it was 80 degrees.
Not
it's terrible.
fun.
It is not. And that's why if you go into my house, it's 65 degrees. And my fiance, you can't stand it, but I love it. But that's me leaving a legacy. So if I can help your whole family tree become financially free, then I know I did something right. That's what motivates me. That's another motivation alongside my family to get up every morning, to push myself harder and harder, and to achieve our goals as a company. Because if we achieve those goals as a company, I know that the goal for everybody who partners alongside of us, their goal will be achieved.
Well, it sounds like those experiences that you had, I would imagine that gives you a much deeper appreciation for what you are building and what you've built.
Very much so.
And what you'll be leaving behind. So I have no doubts about your future successes as well.
We're going to be there together. Let's take that
absolutely. So tell us something, and we're going to, in a moment here, I'm going to ask you to share a confession. But I had a quick question. So tell us something about yourself that people may not know about you, or they might be a little surprised.
Yeah, might be a little surprised. Well, I think this runs alongside the confession too, that they may not know about me and may be a little surprised. If you follow me, you know I'm very big about mindset. I meditate in the mornings and in the evenings. I'm huge about positivity. But when you're along this journey as an entrepreneur, your highs are very high and your lows are very low. And sometimes I joke and, not really joking, but it's true that your lows are like a drug addict getting off a large drug. That's how your lows are. And I think actually the statistics of entrepreneurs, really going very low and, is higher than drug addicts. So because I have so much highs, I do have very low lows. But every time I have those low lows throughout the week, I tell myself in my head, and I look back on how I grew up. I look back on my family and I spark that light again, that flame in my body and in my mind to keep pushing. And so that's one thing I would say is that sometimes I really have low lows, and my fiance knows it, and she knows that I just need to be alone for myself. I need to go on a walk and cool off and to really push myself harder and harder to come out of those lows.
Yeah. And I would have to agree with you, because being an entrepreneur as well, when you have those successes, it's like being on cloud 9.
Oh, I know.
And when something doesn't work out, it can feel really devastating.
Oh, yeah.
And
it feels like you're being buried alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And you mentioned that kind of relates to your confession. So our show is about making confessions. And so what confession would you have for us today?
Yeah, I would say, a confession that no one knows about me is that I've learned very quickly from this is don't hurry up and make a decision. And that's a confession that I would say in my younger days that I've done. And I did not do enough research, and I did not do enough, analysis on the mentors. I've hired mentors before and I've paid lots of money, but I did not do enough research on it. And I was out that money. I've hired GCs that stole money from me in the single family space. So it's very important to really not make a huge jump and a huge decision. And I've learned that very quickly. I think that's that's what's helped us project so much right now as a company, is that I've learned that, and now I know not to do that and to slow things down a little bit. So I would say that would be a confession that no one knows, that I've had trouble with back in the day, but it's actually projected the business now because I've learned from that.
Sure. Well, thanks for your honesty on that. And when we were all back in our younger days, I think we could relate to situations where we made decisions quickly without really understanding what we were getting into, or kind of doing our due diligence, on it. And I mean, but that is part of the learning curve. And you're here to basically tell us, look, it paid off, but if you can avoid it, don't do it.
Yeah,
because you'll save a lot of money.
that is right, but that's why I say get a mentor. Do your research first, but get a mentor, because they're going to help limit those mistakes. When you're about to come into a roadblock, you can call them up and say, look, I'm running into this issue. Have you been through it? If you haven't, do you know someone who has? Or if you have, what would be the best option to take during this situation? And it's truly helpful. Don't be afraid to ask. I ask questions still, and I'll ask questions until I'm dead. I know I will, because I'm always learning, and you need to ask questions and you need to listen to learn. So it's super important.
Well, and being a continuous learner, especially in investing, is highly important, because there's always things changing, right? Industry's changing.
Every hour.
Loan guidelines are changing, all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah. Chris, as we kind of wrap up here, what's the name of your company again, and how can we reach you?
Yeah, so the name of the company is QC Capital. You can reach us at qccapitalgroup.com. You can fill out a form there. You can set up a call with me personally. Would love to chat about real estate. And you can get on our emailing list from there. And any social media platform, if you just type in Chris Salerno, that's how you can find us. And we also do have a podcast, which is the Mindful Multifamily Show.
That's great. I'm going to be checking it out as well. Yeah. And last question for you before we go, what would you suggest to new investors? What's the one tip that you would give them? Educate
yourself, because knowledge is power. Educate yourself. If it's listening to podcasts like yours, if it's reading books. One thing, here's another confession. In college and throughout school, elementary, middle school, and high school, I was put in special reading classes because they called me dyslexic. The teachers called me dyslexic. They said, you had trouble reading, you're dyslexic. You need to have special reading classes. And they programmed that in my brain. Now I can read a 300-page book in less than a week. Wow. Because I love real estate. And I've told myself, yes, I can read. Now, my spelling's not good. My grammar's not good. And I think a lot of people are like that. Thank goodness for spell check and Google.
Seriously.
Yeah. And Grammarly, I love Grammarly. But when it comes to it, you need to surround yourself with people who are where you want to be. But you need to educate yourself, because knowledge is power. Read books. If you are having trouble reading at first, buy it on Audible and buy the actual hard copy and listen to it and follow along. Start to gain the knowledge on how to read better. But that's super important. When I first got into the business, I actually partnered with another operator, and I said, look, I'll drive you around both of the states, the Carolinas. I'll drive you around. I don't care, just so I can gain knowledge.
Wow.
And I did that, and that helped tremendously. So.
And do you have any books lately that you'd recommend?
Oh, yes. I'm reading a bunch of books now on foundations, endowments. So big, high-level hedge fund stuff I'm reading books on now. But what I would recommend for real estate, I would recommend Joe Fairless's book is phenomenal when it comes to real estate investing and syndication. And then a good business book is Mistakes Millionaires Make. A good mindset book is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Very good book. Read that.
Those are a couple books I would highly recommend. Yeah. And before all of it, I would also read the book called The One Thing. Really focusing on your one thing. Gary Keller, the CEO and founder of Keller Williams, wrote it, but it's really focusing on your one thing, because a lot of investors will wholesale, they'll broker real estate, they'll do this and do that and do that. And before you know it, they're not actually growing a business. They're just staying busy. They're not building wealth. So focus on that one thing is a good book.
That's great. Well, thanks for sharing your tidbits of information today, Chris. It was really a pleasure talking with you and just having you on the show and just hearing actually 2 confessions from you, which was great. So Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And I wish you the best success. And I'm sure I will be seeing your deals coming through as well. So.
Yes. Well, I'm glad to be a partner with you and great friends with you. And
absolutely.
I'm glad we're connected and looking forward to the future for the both of us.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris. Well, that wraps up our show. I want to thank you so much for listening. And again, if you have any questions for myself or for Chris, please contact him. And if you want to learn more about multifamily syndication, you can also visit our website at www.legacybloom.com. Alrighty, thank you. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to 50 Shades of Wealth, Confessions of a Real Estate Investor with Sarah Jung. Make sure to visit us at legacybloom.com, where you can join our investor club and grab a free copy of Sarah's latest book. And if you like the show, don't forget to leave us a quick review. Be sure to tune in next time as Sarah pulls back the curtain once again and shares more Confessions of a Real Estate Investor.